Welcome to a new episode on the use of the concept-based system. My name is Manfred Jolsfeld. The topic of today is a new graphical palette called TelosPalette that was introduced just recently with the new version 8.2 of concept-based. So without further ado, let's have a look at it. So we start up the graph browser and you see it already shows as default the Telos palette. The older palette, default Java palette is still there. The Xbridge palette is a technical palette that is used to make Telos palette compatible to the default Java palette and to make it easier to specialize the graphical palette. So let's show it. You see class is displayed as a white rectangle, which is now the default for most objects displayed in the graph editor. So let's see whether we have some subclasses. Yeah, query class. Now the subclass link is this blue arrow with a white arrowhead, uh, which is closer to the UML style of specialization. This has some further subclasses like this. And since the specialization is transitive, we can also show the superclass. Now the superclass link is like the subclass link, but it is a broken line to indicate that it is derived. So most of the derived links will be using this broken link style for easy recognition. Let's see how instances are displayed. Yeah, the instantiation is visualized by this green arrow. We used to have green arrows before, but now it's a broken line. It's not derived, but explicit. This is again mimicking the UML style, um, in particular for the arrowhead. There's no instance of label here, to save some graph space. Now, it may be interesting how the derived instantiation is displayed. So this is instance of, for example, query class. Yeah, this is again a broken link, but it is narrower. The line is narrower. So again, for easy recognition of derived links. Objects can also have attributes and relations. So these are displayed like this. Now in contrast to the previous graphical palette, the label of the attribute is slightly smaller, and it is contrasted against the black line here so that you can more easily read that. Good, so these are the main link types. Now, a special feature of the TelosPalette is that you can more easily specialize it. So let's empty this graph browser, and let's say we have an employee application. Let's make it a bit larger. So we define employee in class and tell it Now assume we would like to display employees as a yellow rectangle instead of a white rectangle. We can define this graphical type like this. That's quite a number of details. So this is the yellow background color. The text color shall be black. The line color of the node shall be also black. The shape of the node shall be a rectangle. The user manual shows you which types of shapes are allowed. You can also configure your own shape as a polygon. We make this resizable, which is a default also in the TelosPalette. So you can make a node bigger and smaller depending on your preference. The line width of the rectangle of the shape shall be 1. You can also have a fraction of 1, like 0.5. This is for technical reason. It tells the graph editor which method is used to display it. Priority is important. All the built-in graphical types have priority smaller, strictly smaller than 10. So when yeah, another graphical type or predefined one is also applicable, this one will override it because it has a higher priority. The assignment of graphical types to objects is usually done by a rule. In this case, all instances of employee get this graphical type, employee TPGT. You can give it a name like you want, but it should not be the name employee. It should be something that symbolizes that this is a graphical type. So let's tell that. This is just a graphical type. It has to be assigned to a new palette, and that would be such a definition. So employee palette is our new graphical palette. It is instantiated to um, Java graphical palette, which is the one that the graph editor, which is implemented in Java, recognizes. Not so important that this is an instance of class, but anyway, if you want to have additional rules, it's useful to make it an instance of class. And we specialize it from TelosPalette. So all the built-in graphical types for nodes and links, instantiations, specializations, attributes are inherited from TelosPalette. So let's tell that. And now we should add, let's say, well, let's load employee again. Let's display that in the graph editor. Now here we have employee. It's a white rectangle because employee is not an instance of itself. Let's define an instance of employee like Bill and tell it, and add Bill to this. It's also white. That might surprise you. It's an instance of employee because currently the palette is a Telos palette. We have to change it to employee palette, and now it's indeed yellow. So employee palette is like Telos palette, except that instances of employees are displayed as yellow rectangles in this case. Let's go a little bit further and extend the Telos palette for some some other classes. So let's assume we define manager in class, and we would like to have a special manager palette, which is not included in the employee palette. So we can do it like this. So manager uh, graphical type is like employee graphical type, but it is a bit darker, more orange. It has a higher priority. So remember that employee had priority 10, now it's 12. And all instances of manager get this as graphical type. They also get employee graphical type because of the previous rule. A manager is a subclass of employee. So any instance of manager shall also be an instance of employee. So in general, each object has several graphical types, but they have different priorities, and the one with the highest priority is chosen. Let's tell that. Now we also have to define the manager palette that is like the employee palette, but it has in addition this graphical type. So let's tell that. To visualize an example, we should also have an instance. So tell that again and add Mary to the graph editor. Yeah, now you might wonder, this is again yellow because we are in the employee palette, not yet in the manager palette. This is instance of manager, and let's display the connection between the two. So it's also an instance of employee. Oh, didn't work out. So let's change the graphical palette to manager palette, which is now offered here. And now we have this orange style. So that, in a nutshell, shows how to use the new TelosPalette. It's a bit closer to the UML graphical symbols, and it makes it much easier to define your customized graphical palette on top of the existing Telos palette, just by adding some more graphical types. With that said, thank you, and have fun with exploring this feature. More details are in the user manual in the appendix on graphical types. Bye bye.